Now each split sleeve that is shipped comes with a set of instructions attached to it. If you have a red binder catalog, these are in the tab section. Now safety is most important. There's a safety checklist here in the first part of the instructions. Certainly want you to take a look at that. If there is any questions technically or safety-wise, there's a phone number here for Department 100. That's a technical committee that you can call, ask for Department 100 number. One of us, myself or one of the other team members, will answer your questions. Now there's step-by-step instructions for everything I'm going to show you in a short bit. Pipe preparation as far as removing coatings, loose scale, things like that from the pipe. The seals can only tolerate about a 32nd of an inch in pitting. So you have to have pretty decent clean surface. We do recommend that the coatings be removed from the pipe so the seals contact good clean pipe. Out of roundness, ovality, the sleeves can tolerate about plus or minus 5% of the OD as long as you are able to spring that pipe back round. Lubricants, there's several lubricants here you can take a look at, and if there's any questions on that, again, call us. I want to point out that in the back of the instructions is a torque chart. Now these torque charts are based on bolt size. The first column will show you the stud bolt diameter. This will tell you what size wrench you need to be using, and then of course the different levels of torque that you need based on the lubricant that you use. What we're using here today is a 7/8 bolt. We're going to be applying about 91 foot-pounds of torque. So what we're going to do is demonstrate how to install the split sleeve, the Plidco split sleeve today. The first thing I'm going to do is show you how the seal arrangement is set up. These seals are positioned in grooves, and there are metal teeth that retain those seals in the groove and prevents them from being displaced while it's being installed. The first thing you want to do is put some grease on the seals. This helps prevent abrasion to the seals while it's being put on the pipe. There are various types of lubricants that can be used. They must be compatible with the seal material. For most applications, the butane and nitriles, you can use just a bearing grease, petroleum-based bearing grease. In this case, I'm using a Teflon-based grease. The center bolt on a standard length sleeve is going to be longer than the four corner bolts. The reason for that is to be able to pull the halves together somewhat to allow full engagement of the shorter bolts on the ends. On a longer sleeve, the corner bolts would actually be longer and the center bolts would be shorter, but their purpose is the same. Now you'll notice that one end is painted yellow on these sleeves. It's a Plidco not only trademark, but it does have a meaning. It is the way they were originally assembled when they were machined. So you are ensured that all the bolt holes, etc., will line up when those yellow ends are matched. Sometimes it's helpful to assemble the sleeve next to the leak and then slide it over the leak. Now the orientation of the sleeve is not that critical. It can be with a split line vertically, it can be with a split line horizontally. Now most of the welders, when they're installing these and you intend them to be welded, most of the welders like the split line to be vertically, so the only overhead weld to be done is at the split line on the bottom, and then the bolts on the side are a side horizontal weldment, which is much easier to access. For our purposes today, we're going to rotate and leave the split line horizontally, and I'll begin drawing the bolts down. Now what's important about this operation is to bring the two halves together equally. The gap from one side to the other should be maintained fairly equally while you're bolting it down to prevent the bolts from binding. I start from the center and work in a crisscross pattern out. It's not that terribly critical, but everybody understands that. I also like to leave all the excess of the stud sticking out one side to keep the stud from bottoming out and making the socket right up on the nut. While the leak has stopped, there's still more to be torqued. So you have more compression to put on the seals. And it's important that the proper torque is applied to the bolt. Now you'll notice as I torque these down that it took several passes around to ensure that all the bolts were up to full torque value. As you tighten one, its neighbor will come loose somewhat until all bolts are up to full torque. So now that we're fully torqued, if it's so desired, you can weld this to the pipeline. We say to weld the circumferential ends first and then the side seams. Some company policies say weld the side seams first, then the ends. That's fine. Our first concern is making sure the pipe is anchored. If there's no structural integrity issues with the pipe, then you can weld the side seams first. It's not an issue. What's important to remember is after you do that welding, the weld contraction will take some of the load off the bolts, and it will be necessary to retorque the bolts prior to welding them. So once you weld your ends, your side seams, retorque all your bolts, and then go back and finish welding the studs and nuts. Now you'll notice, this is up to full torque, that at the base of those bevels is about 1/8 of an inch gap. And the reason for that is because those girderings that retain the seals that are set back inside that gap are already metal to metal, 1/16 per half. So you have 1/8 of an inch gap, and that's normal.